Damien Bartonek here on behalf of Fox West Texas and the official host of MMA Monday, the only MMA show in San Angelo. Now, today I am joined by a very special guest, someone that I look up to personally and professionally, someone that I feel embodies Women's History Month, trailblazer. I can go on and on, but I guess I'll let her tell y'all what's up. Laura Sanko, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that very generous introduction. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of those things where I was very, very excited to hear you commentate for the first time for a UFC event. I believe that was Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I whenever I found out you were going to be on call, I was like, man, I mean, it's my show, so I can cuss. I was like,
Oh, thank you.
this is exactly what I wanted, and I love your mind for jujitsu. I freaking love it. We'll talk about that later,
Okay.
but yeah, it is definitely my pleasure to have you on here. And with that being said, let's just get right into it. Last weekend, UFC San Antonio was a big event, and I asked Holly Holm a question that I want to ask you as well. I told Holly, I said, hey, with it being Women's History Month, you are going down as a mixed martial arts legend. Everything that you've done, a combat sports legend. Let's just, you've done some great things. Laura, I'm not gassing you up here because you're on my show. This is just genuine. You are also a trailblazer in your own right as well, and a Hall of Famer in my eyes as well. So, being that women's MMA is still very new, right? It's still very young in the sport. How does it feel knowing that your fingerprints are also on the development of the sport?
It feels amazing. And that was really the goal. And that goal was born from I just love this sport so much. I just love it. And I love what it's done for me in my life, for my mental health, I could go on and on about the role that it's played in my life. And it was kind of one of those things where it was bittersweet when I wasn't able to continue. I chose not to continue fighting because there really was no place for me to go and fight once I had my son, because I was an atom weight and they're still not in the UFC. So point being, like, I had this love of the sport. I wanted to be able to give back to the sport, but knew that I probably wouldn't be able to do that through fighting longer. So to be able to notch out just even this little tiny piece of history, it's incredibly meaningful to me. And it's still, honestly, because it just happened a few months ago, it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around the fact that I was able to pull it off.
Yeah, no, it's super sick because I've interviewed nothing but women this month for Women's History Month, and I asked them all, like, for in the sports world, having a sport around in the UFC in particular for only 10 years that women been allowed to fight in that promotion, that's very, very young for a sport.
Yeah.
From your perspective, and I'm not going to throw the first generation of fighters under the bus, but from your perspective, what has the evolution of women's MMA look like to you from an analytical mind?
It's been massive. It's been absolutely massive. And you could really see the shift from the old guard to the new guard. Honestly, probably right around the time when Ronda entered the UFC, there was still a few of the really OGs hanging on. For some reason, Roxanne Modafferi, is coming to mind. And she did a tremendous job of continuing to elevate her game in the later years of her career. But there were moments where you could see the women coming up who had been doing mixed martial arts from day one versus women who had come into the sport from another sport. Now, there's lots of great examples who did that, Holly being one of them, who were able to achieve a lot of success. But now I would venture to say that all of the up and comers that we have, the Aaron Blanchfields of the world, they are mixed martial artists from day one. And it makes a massive difference in the level of fight that we're seeing. And it's super exciting for me to see that. And I think, excuse me, a lot of that is born out of the grassroots part of that, right? So why do they fight well? They fight well because they're training better. Well, why are they training better? They're training better because the gyms are more accepting. Like, they're a real part of the team now. When I was fighting, that was not necessarily the case. And I love the gyms that I was at, but it was kind of like, oh, it's cute, you're here,
Yeah.
we'll let you join type of thing. And then within when women were allowed in the UFC and when Ronda became this massive star, people started to realize, oh, like, this is the women's side of the sport is just as legitimate and it's just as big money as the men's side.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, not to make a parallel pro wrestling, but I'm gonna make one anyways because so many of these fighters love pro wrestling. But whenever, you know, women were first introduced to wrestling, they were just managers, right? That's all they were. And they didn't really tell much of a story. Then as the years come on, they're like, okay, now they're wrestling a little bit, but they're still kind of like items, right? They're like, you know, look
Romantic
sexy.
interests.
Yeah, look sexy and just perform. But
Yeah.
now it's a whole new dimension where they're actually putting on. And, you know, obviously in the UFC, I agree with you. I think it's really awesome to see that, you know, so many great female fighters are coming up. I love Erin Blanchfield, absolute dog. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
When she fought Jessica Andrade and finished her, Laura Sanko, my head almost hit the ceiling. I was like, wow, I could not believe it.
Mine did too. Mine did too. And listen, I'm an analyst and I don't mind being made a fool of, to be honest with you, because I did not pick her coming into that fight. I thought Jessica's experience, her power, her strength, you know, just how hard she swings on the feet and her ability to wrestle was going to be a little bit too much physicality for Erin. I knew Erin had really good technique, but anyway, man, when Erin pulled that off, I love it when people are able to surprise us, because at the end of the day, like, I may be an analyst and I may have gotten that one wrong, but I'm a fan at heart. And
Absolutely.
I love seeing people have their moment in the sport. It's so cool.
Yeah, and I actually found the veteran like presence in the octagon. I actually was able to see that when I was up close in the cage. Victor Altamino, whenever he won this past weekend, in the second round, I asked him, I was like, "Hey, I thought you lost that round. The judges, you know, had you losing that round, but in the third round, your veteran leadership, your presence in the octagon showed, because you ended up taking it and turning the tide completely." And I never really like understood that too much on TV. I couldn't really tell, but in person, it's totally different. You can definitely see. But I want to go back to you really quick. You mentioned too that, you know, you had your son and you had to stop fighting, and obviously the weight stuff too. You weren't the UFC doesn't have that weight division, but whenever you're making that transition, was that a difficult transition for you?
In some ways, yes, because I had no training whatsoever in doing media or television, or, you know, I never referred to myself as a journalist, but anything in that world, I didn't know anything about it. You know, my background was in finance. I was in early stage venture capital, and I was doing MMA as a full-time, very dangerous hobby of sorts. You know, when I went pro, I dedicated all my time to it, but regardless, the transition was, I don't know, it was easy in terms of the technical knowledge. It was not easy in terms of the television, the little tips and tricks that people who have been doing that for a few years know what to do and how to do it and how to present well. That I had to learn on the fly on live television, and that I'm sure there's some fun, rough moments we could all go back and find.
Yeah, but that's for everyone. I mean, even myself, like, that's everyone goes through that. And I went to school for this, right? But the school I went to, I didn't get like on camera training, right? I kind of like, I remember my first week at my job, my boss told me the next week, he was like, "Hey, Marissa, that's my coworker. He was like, she's gonna be out, so you're gonna have to anchor next week." And I was just like, all right, like, here we go. But
sometimes that's the best way to do it, though.
Yeah.
Just get thrown in there. I mean, that's kind of, I was almost like so naive that I didn't know what I didn't know. So I just like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. You know,
Absolutely.
gotta make it work.
Absolutely. And kind of like a baptism by fire is interesting because it works in this realm, and honestly in the realm of jiu-jitsu, as someone that's recently been practicing as well. I'm new to the sport, but I love it so much. You know,
Welcome
I love
to
it.
the dark
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, I love it. I love it enough, Laura, to go to my 5:30 in the morning training sessions. Let's just say that. That's how much I love it. Okay.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
You need a slow clap for that one. That is dedication.
Absolutely. And I love it for many reasons, but you're also someone that's highly skilled. I love a lot of your stuff, a lot of your videos, your instructional videos that you have on YouTube. But I want to ask, right? This is just a question that I've heard, a statement I've heard. A lot of people say jiu-jitsu lives and dies in the gi. Do you believe that?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't. No, I understand why the purists would feel that way. And I think that probably their perspective of jiu-jitsu lives and dies in the gi. They probably watch a lot of, especially in MMA, like there's a transition, right? There's gi jiu-jitsu, there's no gi jiu-jitsu, and then there's no gi jiu-jitsu in the context of MMA, which I'm sure when they watch it, they're just like, you know, the purity of it is tainted. But listen, I think jiu-jitsu is just such a beautiful art form that even when you put in these different contexts with slightly different ways to approach it. Now, listen, I'm saying that with a lot of, you know, I have a very particular perspective because the vast majority of my 16 years doing jujitsu was no-gi. So of course I'm going to say that.
Yeah, I personally, I love the gi. I love it. Like I really enjoy it. I feel like for a novice like myself, I think it's better for me to
It's a
learn.
great way to start. It's a
Yeah,
great way
in
to
the
start.
gi,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I wanted to ask you because you're someone that's obviously very skilled in that and very you know a lot about it. Obviously, you know more than Michael Bisping and Paul Felder. Wink, wink. You know what I mean? But
Just the buggy choke. Just the buggy choke.
but yeah, I just have a couple more for you. You know, as we're going on, and you know, it is Women's History Month. It's the last day of Women's History Month. You know, a lot of people, and include both men and female, have looked up to you in different ways. For you, what does it mean to have that support, even from someone like me that's like, you know, I grew up in this, you know, I didn't grow up in this industry, but I chose to be in this. And I look at someone like you who was a quote unquote outsider who just made it happen, right? To you, does that kind of put a chip on your shoulder knowing that so many people are rooting for you?
It means so much because one of my biggest fears when I started to transition from calling Invicta fights, which felt really safe because that's where I fought, all female promotion. And I'll be honest, the Invicta fan base is incredibly forgiving. Like they don't really even care what your fight record is. They just love the people and they'll support you no matter what. So it's a very supportive place. UFC fans, and I'm one of them, are a rough lot. And I knew that. So when I transitioned to LFA and started calling male fights, even just that little bit, the LFA audience is obviously much smaller, but it's also the diehards who are, you know, watching LFA broadcasts. So one of my biggest fears would just be that the male fans would not be accepting of having a female voice represent their sport because it's just not what we're used to. It just isn't. And I knew that could potentially be a factor. And I knew that it would be really important to try to win over a big chunk of that fan base through my knowledge and my personality and my presence and just being, I don't know, being genuine, being open and honest on camera about my shortcomings and whatever else. But to have that support from people like you, it's the only reason I was able to continue to push forward when there were so many moments where it felt like the door, you know, was being slammed in my face. One day I'll write a book about all the no's and the failures and the crying. And, you know, I think from the outside, people see a lot of my successes. Like people are like, oh my gosh, you've had the craziest, fastest rise to the top. And I get from the outside, it may look like that, but I'm telling you, it's not.
No.
There's a lot that went on behind the scenes that was hard. So yeah, to have that support is just, it means a lot.
Yeah, and I tell people that all the time. So many people from, you know, growing up, you know, 'cause I went to a high school in a minority high school. You know, not a lot of money. I can honestly count. You know, I have as many fingers as people that I know that went to college. To be honest,
Yeah.
and a lot of people tell me like, oh, you know, congrats, and you know, they're I get a lot of messages. Let's just say that, and I always tell them like I appreciate it, but I just want you to know too, like this business is a lot of no's. It's 95% no. And to be honest, even what you see on TV is like 5 or 10% of my job. The other 90, 85 is like, you know, that's what makes that's what separates, you know, someone who wants to be it and someone that loves to be it is because, you know, you only what you see on TV is a very small fraction of what you have to do that goes into it. So it's also nice to talk to someone that understands that. Trust me, it's very, very cool.
It is nice to know that like you get exactly what I'm talking about. I don't think people realize how much time I just spend in front of a computer, like many hours per person on a card. When you've got 15 fights on a card, you've got 30 people times 3 hours a person. That's, I mean, do the math. It's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And my last one just is going to be on some fights and fighters and stuff like that. I love the fighting style of a guy like Kamaru Usman, and I know people are going to hate me, but I'm a huge Colby Covington fan. I love his fighting style.
I don't mind him either. I'll be honest.
I love his fighting style. But the one thing, Laura, I want to ask, and I want to interview Colby, and I want to ask him the same thing. And I'll tell him like, I am a journalist, I have a degree, so don't worry. You know what I mean? I would ask him. A lot of these guys are in very favorable positions wrestling wise, right? Kamaru was in the second fight with Leon, but I would think they would truly try to go for the submission a bit more, or actually be able to get it because they're in good positions. Do you think there's like a small disconnect between like American wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that there can be.
uh,
I don't know that it's the case for Kamaru Usman, because I think that he probably sees the closest path to victory
uh,
in terms of a finish
uh,
from getting that dominant position through his wrestling and then being able to ground and pound or just stay there and land enough damage to get, a decision.
mhm.
I agree with you that can exist, but to me, it actually points to the evolution of the defense
Yeah,
in
okay.
this.
Yeah.
I think that jujitsu defense in particular has, and wrestling defense, to be honest with you, has really evolved. Like that's why triangles now are pretty rare.
Mhm.
Triangle finishes are. It's because we learned that defense from day one now, and so many people are coming into the sport with a really, really good base of jujitsu. You've got coaches that are really kind of figuring out what I referred to earlier is not just the gi jujitsu defense, not just the no gi jujitsu defense, but the no gi in the context of MMA. Everything is getting really specified the way that we train. It's so different now, even compared to when I started, which was in 2007. The
Yeah.
training is completely different in my experience. So I think to me, it's an evolution of the sport, but I certainly see your point. It can be for some fighters, they never find that interstitial between the wrestling and the jujitsu. And there's an in-between game that you got to have if you're going to get to the jujitsu for sure.
And there's obviously some technical things like Colby Covington does well. Like, for example, in the Masvidal fight, whenever he has that little gap between him and the cage, he purposely wants Masvidal to twist into him for some ground and pound. And I totally am fine with that. And me, I'm like, man, if you had a gi on, you could just cross choke right there, cross choke. but yeah, no, I was just very interested. I wanted to hear your perspective because I think these guys, especially a guy like Colby, who's excellent pressure, excellent wrestling. Me, I'm more of a pressure passer in jiu-jitsu, so I definitely respect that. I was like, man, if Colby can start to get some finishes, or even guys like that have that base, man, you talk about a whole nother level that you can go into your game. Because I think Colby's in his prime. I think guys like that are in his prime, and I just wanted to hear your perspective because I don't know. You're like one of the only people I know that would understand what I'm saying. So
yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. And in terms of Colby, it's funny because I'm not a huge fan of his persona. I
yeah,
definitely don't like what he did to John the other week. That was
yeah,
ridiculously uncalled for. But I've interacted with Colby off camera a number of times, and he's awesome.
yeah,
So I wish he would, like, I don't know. Let's not threaten people who aren't fighters
yeah.
for a start. You know what I mean? But no, I love watching him fight, and he's actually a pretty great guy when the camera's not on.
Yeah, whenever you interviewed him and he made you, he
Oh my God.
yeah, you interviewed him and he just like, I
Yeah.
think you said something, you started laughing, you're like, hold on. You're like,
Yeah, I can't when he says stuff like that. I was worried actually that like Dustin or his or Dustin's wife would be offended that I laughed. It
yeah,
wasn't that I thought what he said was funny. It's that like I just couldn't take him seriously saying such.
yeah,
Who says
wild.
that? Like who
Yeah,
says that? You're
yeah,
just you're so much right now.
yeah.
I can't even take you seriously.
I think too, just ending on him, I think the only thing that I see from his perspective is many people, like, if his story really is, and I believe it, that
Mhm.
he was going to get cut and a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't care about him, right? Let's just
Mhm.
call it what it is. And then he started doing this and everyone was on board with it, right? And then the only way you can, excel in your career is being that old school pro wrestling heel, because that's what
Mhm.
he is.
Yeah.
That's truly what he is. Because the difference between his heat and people like, whomever that fans just don't like
Mhm.
they will watch Colby Covington fight. They will pay to watch him. It's different between someone like him and someone who people are just like, they don't care for.
Yeah.
But my thing on him is, I think he takes a lot of stuff personally because of the position he came up in, right?
Sure.
And so when he goes at a guy like John, I think he can win over the line. I just think honestly he takes a lot of things personally, and you honestly sometimes you got to do that as a fighter, man. You
Yeah.
got to put that chip on your shoulder, and that's not saying it's okay what he said, but
Yeah.
I think
Just don't mess with John Anik.
don't Dad. John Anik's cool people, man. You can't mess with
Everybody
John
loves
Anik.
John.
Yeah,
You just don't fuck around.
yeah.
Don't mess around with John.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Colby and overall the UFC, I think it's in a good spot. And with you and Megan, leading the charge, especially on color and analysts, all that stuff. It has been a joy for me to watch. And as we wrap up here, please let the fans know anything you got going on. Tell them about your jiu-jitsu YouTube page, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys enjoy seeing unique jiu-jitsu demonstrations, my page kind of focuses on like unusual submissions, unusual setups. So check it out at 1-on-1. I do a preview for every single one of the UFC pay-per-views, usually with Dean Thomas. They're a lot of fun, and I always love his perspective because Dean's not afraid to tell you like it is.
Yeah.
He'll say stuff I'm not willing to say, to be honest with you. So those are always great. So yeah, check out the YouTube channel 1-on-1. You can find me on Instagram at Laura_Sanko. And I try really hard to interact with as many people as I can. It's getting to the point where that's hard to do, but I do my best. So appreciate a follow.
Absolutely. And Laura, I want to say for wrapping up Women's History Month, it was an absolute pleasure. Someone that I'll actually be in Vegas for International Fight. I got approved for credentials.
Nice.
So if I see you, I'll definitely, reach out to you. I know you get interviewed a lot, you talk to a lot of people, so I'm sure you're not going to remember who I am, but I'll definitely more than, you can be like, thank you for that and all that other stuff. But I appreciate you again. I appreciate your contributions to the sport, and I can't wait to see what else 2023 has in store for you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Damien. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And with Fox West Texas, I'm Damien Bartonek, signing out. Perfect.